in honor of Chodesh Tishrei and all the guests that come to the Rebbe, to be by the Rebbe in 770 for Chodesh Tishrei, we're going to be learning this week the Sikha known as Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel. The Sikha could be found in Sefer HaSichas Tafshin Beis, Chelik Beis, page 465. In this Sikha, in which the Rebbe discusses at great length the significance and the amazing qualities of 770, besides the inside of the Sikha itself, there's a lot of fascinating and amazing footnotes, ha'aris, and we're going to be learning some of the ha'aris. When we come to the ha'aris, I'll point out which ha'aris we're actually learning, where we can find the ha'aris, and some of them will do more in detail, some of them just covering the general idea. So the Rebbe starts off the Sikha and quotes a pasuk in Yecheskel that says, "Va'ehi lohem lemikdash ma'at ba'arotzes asher bo sham." The Eibishter says, "I was a miniature Beis Hamikdash for the Yidden in the lands where they have come." What is this referring to? That also in Chutz La'aretz, in the place and time of Golus, there is always a Mikdash Ma'at, there is a miniature Beis Hamikdash, similar to the big Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim, or second to the Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim. Regarding this, the Gemara says, what specifically does this refer to? Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Elu Bati Knesiyos uBati Medrashes ShebeBovel. These are the shuls and the Bati Medrash in Bovel. Rabbi Lazar says, this refers to Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel, the house of our Rebbe in Bovel. In footnote number 5, the Rebbe is quoting from Rashi, and the Rebbe says Rabeinu ShebeBovel more specifically knows to the famous Amoira known as Rav. So, do we have a machloikus over here, whether it's referring just to general and all shuls and Bati Medrash, or to the house of Rabbeinu, Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel? So the Rebbe says that we could say that Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Lazar are actually not arguing. That means to say, even Rabbi Lazar, who says Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel, would agree that all shul and all Bati Medrash are also called a Mikdash Ma'at. Also Rabbi Yitzchak, that says all shuls and Bati Medrash are called a Mikdash Ma'at, would agree that the main Mikdash Ma'at is Beis Rabeinu. So in other words, they really are agreeing and complementing with each other, while Rabbi Yitzchak is saying in a general way that all shul and Bati Medrash are called Mikdash Ma'at. Rabbi Lazar is specifying that primarily this is referring to Beis Rabeinu. And the Rebbe explains why that is, why it would be more in Beis Rabeinu. The Rebbe explains the title Rabbeinu, why is it called Rabbeinu, is because he's our Rebbe, he teaches Torah to the Talmidim. What does Beis Rabeinu mean? The place where he's teaching Torah to his Talmidim. In other words, it's a Beis Medrash, a place of learning. Since it's a place of learning, automatically it's also a Beis HaKnesses, a place for davening. The place where the Rav and the Talmidim get together for davening. Because we know that learning and davening are supposed to be in the same place. As the Gemara itself goes on and says over there, that one of the Amoiroim says, Havi Garisna, I would always learn B'vei Knishta in the same place where I would daven. So therefore, when we say Beis Rabeinu, it's already also a shul and a Beis Medrash. And there's an additional advantage in the Beis HaKnesses and the Beis HaMedrash of Rabeinu in comparison to other Bati Knesiyos and Bati Medrashas, based on the following Maimer Chazal. The Pasuk says, Oyev Hashem Shari Tzion Mikoil Mishkanois Yaakov. What does this pasuk mean? Says the Gemara that the Eibishter likes the places that are specifically distinguished as places where halacha is paskin, even more than regular shulin and Bati Medrash. As the Gemara says that Miyoim Shecharav Beis Hamikdash, when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, Eim Le'Lakadosh Baruch Hu Boi Lamoi, the place where the Eibishter has is the 4 cubits, the 4 amis of halacha. In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, we had the Lishkas Hagazis, the place where the Sanhedrin was, in the Beis Hamikdash, and they paskin the halacha for Klal Yisrael, and surely the Shechina was with them. So now that the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, we don't have the Sanhedrin in the Beis Hamikdash. We don't have that area of halacha. So therefore, the place where there's a set place for halacha and hoirah coming out to the place of the city, that becomes the place of the Shechina. And that's the idea of Beis Rabeinu, the place where Rabbeinu gives his hoirahs from, where the Rebbe gives his hoirahs from, and automatically also a place for davening. And because of this special mila of the Beis HaKnesses and the Beis HaMedrash, of Beis Rabeinu in comparison to the other Batei Knesiyos and Batei Medrashos within Bavel. So therefore we say that this is considered the Mikdash Ma'at HaIkri, the main Mikdash Ma'at, in which the Eibishter is giving the Yidden in the time of Golus instead of the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim. So in summary, yes, it's true every single Beis HaKnesses and Beis HaMedrash is a Mikdash Ma'at, but specifically Beis Rabeinu, the place where the main Hoirois come out for Yidden, the main instructions come out for Klal Yisrael, similar to the Sanhedrin. In the Beis HaMikdash, this becomes the main Beis Medrash, the main place of Halacha, and the place of learning, the place of davening, and therefore out of all Batei Knesses and Batei Medrash, this becomes the main Mikdash Ma'at for Yidden in the time of Golus. Says the Rebbe in Sif Beis, to prove that there could be these different levels within the Mikdash Ma'at, the Rebbe says we could have a look in the beginning of that very, very Gemara, where it speaks about the idea of the Shechina dwelling amongst the Yidden in the time of Golus. The Gemara says over there that in every single place where the Yidden went into Golus, the Shechina always came along with them. When the Yidden went to Mitzrayim, the Shechina is with them. When the Yidden went to Bavel, the Shechina is with them. And then the Gemara says, within Bavel itself, where is the Shechina? So the Gemara says, Omar Abaye said, in the shul of Hutzal, the name of a place, as well as in the shul, Shof v'Yosiv bin Nahardo'o. And we'll see in a minute, a footnote over here, number 14, we're going to learn in a minute what Shof v'Yosiv is referring to. And then the Gemara says, and do not say that it's in both places at the same time, in Hutzal and in the shul of Shof v'Yosiv in Nahardo'o, rather sometimes here and sometimes here. So what we're going to see in a minute over here is the idea that there's clearly differences between shuls itself, where the Shechina is mainly at certain times. In footnote number 14, the Rebbe brings from the Mefarshim what the name Shof v'Yosiv is all about. So the Rebbe says, first of all, the Rebbe quotes that from Rashi, that Shof v'Yosiv is the name of a place, and that Yechonia and the people along with him built this shul, and it was taken from the earth and from the stones. They brought it along with them from Eretz Yisrael. And the Rebbe also brings that in the Aruch it actually says that it was from the stones and the earth of the Beis HaMikdash itself. And finally in this Ha'ara in 14, the Rebbe says that the name Shof v'Yosiv, and this is going to become very, very relevant and important later in the Sikha, that the word Shof v'Yosiv itself means, translated, Shof means it traveled, the Yosiv means and it settled. So Shof v'Yosiv, it's like saying that the Beis HaMikdash traveled and settled in this particular place in Nahardo'o. So this shul is taking the place of the Beis HaMikdash. Back inside the Sikha, the Rebbe explains, when we say the idea Shechina Iman, that the Shechina is with the Yidden in Golus, obviously what we mean is a special Gilui Shechina similar to the way it was in the Mishkan and in the Beis HaMikdash. Where does the Eibishter dwell? In the Batei Knesses and the Batei Medrash. That's why they are called Mikdash Ma'at, as the Gemara discusses. So when the Gemara now says ShebeBovel Heichel, within Bavel itself, where is the Shechina dwelling? In the shul within Hutzal, or in the shul of Shof v'Yosiv ben Nahardo'o, obviously the Gemara is specifying special shuls within Bavel. So even though we said before, the Shechina is in every shul, so obviously if we're specifying certain shuls, we mean that there's a greater Gilui Shechina more than in a regular shul and Beis Medrash. In other words, a place where it's noticeable more that the Shechina is actually there. And furthermore, that there's one designated place, and one special place, that's exactly instead of the place, the holy place in Yerushalayim, the place that the Eibishter chose. So there's one place in which the main Shechina is expressing itself and revealed, and that's why the Gemara says, do not say hacha v'hacha, that it's in both shuls at the same time, in the shul in Hutzal and in the shul of Shof v'Yosiv ben Nahardo'o, rather sometimes here, sometimes there, meaning to say, and implying that there's always one special place where the Shechina is going to dwell. The Rebbe says this is emphasized specifically in the name of the shul that we just mentioned before, the shul of Shof v'Yosiv in Nahardo'o. What does Shof v'Yosiv mean? Shenasa Mikdash, that the Mikdash as if traveled and settled over there. In other words, the same Gilui Shechina that was in the Mikdash and in Yerushalayim, something specific there that wasn't in other places, this is the level that's traveling and settling in a specific place in Bovel, taking the place of the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim. So now we can understand also that when the Gemara later discusses the concept of the Mikdash Ma'at, and we say that these are in the shuls and the Batei Medrash in Bovel, but at the same time there's also always that main shul, that main Mikdash Ma'at, that's instead of the Mikdash in Yerushalayim, and that's what we meant when we said Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel. This is the place where the Beis HaMikdash, so to speak, settled over there instead of the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim. Says the Rebbe in Seif Gimel, V'oid v'ikar, even more important, this special mile of the Mikdash Ma'at of Beis Rabeinu continues and is going to be very, very relevant and important also when the Geula is going to come. Why is that? So we know that the Gemara continues over there and speaks about the idea that the Shulin and the Batei Medrash in Bovel are going to be moved and set in Eretz Yisrael. So we know that the Hashras HaShechina in every single place, that the fact that the Shechina dwells in every single place where the Yidden are, and this comes through the Mikdash Ma'at, in the lands where they had arrived, and we said that similar to the Gilui HaShechina as it was in Yerushalayim, is not only during the time of Golus, but actually also, as well, after they're going to be redeemed. We know that the Shechina is going to return to Yerushalayim, is not going to remain anymore in the place where the Yidden were in Golus. So the Asheras HaShechina is not going to be in the place in Chutz La'aretz where that Mikdash Ma'at was standing, because the very Mikdash Ma'at itself is going to move and going to be transported into Eretz Yisrael, going to become part of the big Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim. In fact, that's why the Medrash says that La'asid Lavi, the Beis HaMikdash, is going to be as big as the whole Yerushalayim the way we have it these days. Why is that? Because Yerushalayim, the way it's going to be La'asid, is going to be having all of the shuls that were Ba'olam Hazeh in the time of Golus that we had outside of Yerushalayim. They are all going to become now part of the Beis HaMikdash, and that's why the Beis HaMikdash is going to be as big as Yerushalayim. This is also hinted in the Pasuk Vavi Oy Similar Kochi. The Eibishter says, I'm going to bring the Yidden to my holy mountain, V'simachtim b'veis tfilosi, and then the Pasuk concludes and says, Yikarei l'chol ha'amim. What does Yikarei l'chol ha'amim mean? So the Rebbe says that the pshat over here is that the Beis Tfilosi, the house of my davening, is referring to the Beis HaMikdash the way it's going to be lost at Lavoi. So this Beis HaMikdash is, so to speak, going to call out all of the shuls in Eretz Ha'amim, in the place. Yikarei l'chol ha'amim is going to call and bring all of the shuls in Chutz La'aretz, that they are going to come and become attached to the Beis HaMikdash. If that's the case, so now we have even a greater mile in the Mikdash Ma'at, and this miniature Beis HaMikdash of a shul that's now a Mikdash Ma'at, because in Yerushalayim that's going to be rebuilt when Mashiach comes, attached to it is going to be also all of these shuls that were in Chutz La'aretz nowadays. So therefore, when we have a shul in Chutz La'aretz and in Golus nowadays, this really is the actual place of the Beis HaMikdash itself, because this is part of what's going to be eventually the Beis HaMikdash. Says the Rebbe V'yeshloimar that the fact that the shuls and the are going to be attached to the Beis HaMikdash La'asid, the order of that is also going to be Lefi Erech, in accordance to the various different madregis within shuls. So the very special shuls that have a special quality over other shuls. For example, like the Gemara said, the shul in Hutzal, or the shul that we call Shof V'Yosiv, or Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel. These are all going to be closer attached to the Beis HaMikdash. They are going to be the closest to the Beis HaMikdash, actually touching it without any separation. And through them, and next to them, is going to be all the other Batei Knesiyos, all the other shuls from the rest of the places. So therefore, what the Rebbe is now saying is, first of all, we had in the first few sifim, the Rebbe explained how the Shechina itself is dwelling in the Mikdash Ma'at. Now the Rebbe extended that also to speak about that when the Geula is going to come, these shul are going to become part of the Beis HaMikdash, and the special shuls are going to be the closest to the Beis HaMikdash. Says the Rebbe now even a bigger chiddush in Seif Dalet. The Rebbe says, furthermore, the Beis HaMikdash La'asid, which we know is already standing and set up and is going to be revealed and come down from Shemayim. Where is it going to come down? It's first going to come down in the place where the Mikdash was in the time of Golus, in Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel. So the Beis HaMikdash will first come down to where Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel is, and from there it's going to move to Yerushalayim. How do we understand that? And why should it be that? Why should it be that way? So the Rebbe explains. The fact that the Shechina is shining in the Mikdash Ma'at, in the main Mikdash Ma'at, in Bovel, is not only during the time of Golus, but also at the moment of the Geula, as the Gemara says. That when the Yidden are going to be taken out of Golus, when the Geula is going to come, the Shechina is going to go along with them. As the Pasuk says, the Shav Hashem Elikecha es Shvuscha, the Eibishter is going to bring back all of the Yidden that were in Golus. But the Gemara says, it doesn't say V'heishiv, he is going to make you return only, but rather V'shav, as if he himself is going to return. This teaches us that the Eibishter himself returns with the Yidden. That's a pshat. Es Shavuscha means he's going to return with you from amongst the Golus. In other words, in the very, very last moment of Golus, the Shechina is going to be together with the Yidden of Golus, with the Yidden in Golus. And as we said, there's the place of the Beis HaMikdash that traveled to Golus, and from there the Eibishter is going to return with all the Yidden to the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, in order to make his Shechina rest and be revealed forever and ever in Yerushalayim. So since the Eibishter himself is going to be returning from Golus, from the Mikdash Ma'at, from Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel, from the place where the Beis HaMikdash had traveled to Bovel, or to the place of Golus, so that means that that's also the place from where the Geula starts, the Geula of the Shechina, and the revelation of the Shechina in its greatest form, not only in a way of Mikdash Ma'at, but the Geula is going to be a complete Geula right away. So therefore also the future Beis HaMikdash, the Beis HaMikdash La'asid, will also be revealed there right away. Or to put it in other words, just like the Shechina, we say, is going to return from the place where it was last in Golus, in exactly the same way the Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash is the place where the Shechina dwells. So the Beis HaMikdash also returns from the place where it was last in Golus. So therefore the Beis HaMikdash, the main Beis HaMikdash, is revealed, number one, right over there, in the place where it was. And then it moves from there to Yerushalayim. And in number 31, the Rebbe clarifies this point by comparing it to the concept of the Sanhedrin. We know that the Sanhedrin is a similar sort of idea, that the Sanhedrin went in Golus from the Beis HaMikdash a number of different stages and places. The final place where they were was in Tveria. So the Rambam paskins that where is the Sanhedrin going to come back to? Number one, it's going to start in Tveria, the last place where they were. From there, from Tveria, it's going to return to Yerushalayim. The Rebbe now inside the Sikha says that perhaps we could say that all of this is also hinted in the Rambam in the Halachos where he discusses Melech HaMashiach. So the Rebbe is now going to show this idea that the Beis HaMikdash starts off in Chutz La'aretz, which is obviously a very big Chiddush. And this is what the Rebbe says. So the Rebbe says, let's look at the Rambam. The Rambam says, Uvona Mikdash b'm koimoy. That one of the things Mashiach is going to do, he's going to build the Beis HaMikdash b'm koimoy. So what does this word b'm koimoy, in his place or in its place, what does that mean? What's the Chiddush that the Beis HaMikdash is going to be b'm koimoy in its place? Obviously that's where the Beis HaMikdash is built. On the other hand, if the Rambam is concerned with the Beis HaMikdash being in its place, why doesn't he say what the place is? He should have said he's going to build the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim. Says the Rebbe that with the Rambam saying the word b'makoimoy, there's a remez over here that b'makoimoy means in his place, in the place of Melech HaMashiach. That means in the place where Mashiach is in the time of Golus, even before the final stage of Mashiach Vadai. That means even while he's still in Golus, where Mashiach is sitting and waiting to take out all the Yidden and the Shechina from Golus. At that point, in Golus, Melech HaMashiach builds a Mikdash Ma'at. He builds a place that's similar to the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim. Or as we had before, like we had the concept of the Shul of Shof V'Yossi, like we said that the Beis HaMikdash itself traveled over there. So Mashiach builds a Shul, Mashiach builds a place in the time of Golus, a Mikdash Ma'at, as a hachana for the Mikdash Asid. And as we said before, the Beis HaMikdash Lasid will first be Nizgala over there, and from there it will move and return to Yerushalayim. At this point I would like to just go into a few of the ha'aros over here. Some very, very interesting footnotes that the Rebbe deals with in, once we're learning Pshat, that the pshat of Ubana Mikdash Bim Koime means that Mashiach first builds a mikdash or a shul in the place where he is in Golus. So if we have a look at Ha'ara 35, so the Rebbe says that based on this, we could also understand the difference between the beginning of the Perek in the Rambam over there and the end of the Perek. In the beginning of the Perek, the Rambam writes the halacha that Hamelech HaMashiach is going to build a Beis HaMikdash, and over there, obviously, he's referring to the Beis HaMikdash in the simple sense. Later on, when the Rambam is discussing the various different signs, how we understand and we decide who Mashiach is, the idea of Becheskas Mashiach, and then Mashiach Levadai, the Rambam writes, also v'yitzliach, that if he will do all of this and will be successful, Uvana Migdash B'm Koimoi, so then we know that he's for sure Mashiach, etc., etc. So in other words, what we are saying is that part of his activities, even still being in Golus, all of that is building the Mikdash. So that's the Mikdash Ma'ato Ikri, the main Mikdash, as it is in the time of Golus. And all of this is as a preparation for the way the Mikdash is going to be Nizgala, La'asid, the final Beis HaMikdash, the way it's going to come down and be revealed. So that was footnote number 35. In footnote number 38, the Rebbe says quite an amazing thing. And what the Rebbe says is like this. Again, continuation to this idea, saying that the Beis HaMikdash is first in Chutz La'aretz, and referring first of all to the Mikdash Ma'at within Chutz La'aretz. Says the Rebbe in Ha'ara 38, sorry. V'ulai yeshloima, perhaps we could say. We know that the Rebbe quoted the following medrash many, many times. That b'shor shemelech HaMashiach bada, when Mashiach is going to come, he's going to stand on the rooftop of the Beis HaMikdash. And he's going to notify the Yidden and tell the Yidden, Anavim higia zman geulaschem, humble ones, the time of the Geula has arrived. So the Rebbe says, what is this actually referring to? It's not referring to the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, as the Rebbe clarifies, because once we have the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, had come down in a miraculous way, and we have the Beis HaMikdash down in Yerushalayim, Mashiach doesn't have to tell the Yidden, Yigiyas Man Gulaschem, then it's quite obvious already. Rather, the Rebbe says, standing on the rooftop of the Beis HaMikdash refers to the Mikdash Ma'at in Chutz La'aretz. Furthermore, the Rebbe says, if we look now all the way on the bottom, where there's the two little stars, the Rebbe says that's also the pshat why we emphasize the Gag Beis HaMikdash. In the Beis HaMikdash itself, we are told that the roof of the top of the Beis HaMikdash did not get the same kedusha as the Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, what's the pshat when the Medrash tells us the Mashiach is going to stand on the roof of the Beis HaMikdash? What we mean by that is a level of the Beis HaMikdash, but that's not quite like the Beis HaMikdash. In other words, we're speaking really about the Beis HaMikdash the way it's in Chutz La'aretz, the Mikdash Ma'at the way it's in Chutz La'aretz. That's where Mashiach makes his announcement from. And is referred to as the Gag Beis HaMikdash because in comparison to the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, since it does not have that same level of Kedusha, it's like the Gag in comparison to the Beis HaMikdash. Says the Rebbe further in Sifhei, V'yesh l'hoisif, we can add a further mila, further explanation in the whole idea of Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel, that its quality in comparison to other shuls and Batei Medrash ShebeBovel is that in addition to the fact that it's the Beis HaKnesses and the Beis HaMedrash within Beis Rabeinu, it's also, the focus over here is also because of Beis Rabeinu. In other words, besides just being a very important shul and a main shul and so on and so forth, but it's also, let's look at the word Rabbeinu itself. What does Rabbeinu mean? Rabbeinu means the Rebbe of all Bnei Yisrael, our Rebbe, the Nasi Hadoir. When we say Rabbeinu ShebeBovel, so we mean the Rebbe of all Yidden that are in the time of Golus. So what does Beis Rabeinu mean? So Beis Rabeinu, in other words, means the house of the Nasi Hadoir, which we know the concept that Hanasi, who are called Nasi, includes everything else. Why is that so significant over here? Why do we say that the main Shechina is in the house of the Beis Rabeinu, the place of the Nasi? So the Rebbe explains. We know that the main idea of the Shechina dwelling in the Beis HaMikdash was actually not only about the stones and the physical structure of the Beis HaMikdash, it was mainly because of the Maila of the Yidden. We know that the Yidden and the Eibishter are all one. As the Pasuk says, V'asuli Mikdash Shachanti B'soichom. We all know the concept that it doesn't say B'soichom I will dwell in it, but rather B'soichom I will dwell amongst them. in a similar way, when we speak about the Hashras HaShchina in the time of Golus, that we said before, the various different shuls where the Shechina mainly dwells. So it's also to do with the fact that the Shechina is dwelling amongst the Yidden. That's why the Shechina is there. And as the Gemara itself says, Boy Yurei, come and see how precious and cherished Yidden are for the Eibishter, that wherever they go, Shechina Iman, the Shechina is with them. And not only that, but the Esgalos HaShechina in the Beis HaMikdash. Why does the Shechina dwell in the Beis HaMikdash? That's because all the Yidden come to the Beis HaMikdash. As the Pasuk says, V'voichol Yisrael, when all the Yidden come to be seen by the Eibishter in the place where he chooses. So that's the place where the Shechina comes, because the Yidden are there. Says the Rebbe in a similar way regarding the shuls and the Bati Medrash in Golos, that what's the idea of the shul and Beis Medrash? It's a place where Yidden gather. Asorim Yisrael, we know that wherever there's 10 Yidden, that's where the Shechina dwells. Says the Rebbe, in fact, that's one of the reasons why these shul and Bati Medrash are called a Mikdash Ma'at. Because in the Beis HaMikdash, where all the Yidden came together, so you had the Gilui, the revelation of the Klolos HaShechina, of the whole Shechina, which the Shechina, by the way, is called Knesset Yisrael, the source of Neshamas Yisrael, and so on. Whereas a shul and a Beis Medrash in other places where the Yidden ended up in every single country and city, where there are smaller amounts of Yidden, so there's also Kvayachal, a little part of the Shechina, but that's why we call it a Mikdash Ma'at. It's only a small Mikdash in comparison to the Beis HaMikdash where all the Yidden gathered, and therefore the main aspect of the Shechina was revealed. If that's the case, says the Rebbe, now we can understand the special quality of Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel. Since this is the place of the Nasi Hador, and we just said HaNasi Yu'akol, the Nasi includes all the Yidden of the generation. So therefore, you have the Klolos HaShechina, the most general aspect of the Shechina, that comes and dwells over there, not only like a little part of the Shechina, which comes whenever you have 10 Yidden, similar to what we said before about the Beis HaMikdash. That, in the Beis HaMikdash, you had all of the Yidden, and that's why you have the whole Shechina there. Therefore, in a similar way we have, where you have the Nasi Hadoir, where you have the Nasi, that's the place where the Klolos HaShechina is. And from there, the Shechina also comes out to the rest of the places, to the rest of the Bati Knesses and the Bati Medrash, just like in the Beis HaMikdash, that we said that from the Beis HaMikdash, the light came out to the rest of the world. Says the Rebbe, V'yesh loymar, that the house of the Nasi Hadoir, which we just said the Nasi Hadoir includes the whole generation, is similar to something that we say about the Beis HaMikdash. There's a pasuk that calls the Beis HaMikdash the place of Talpios, which simply Talmios means a special place, a distinguished place, and so on. But the Gemara says that the word Talpios, it's divided into two words. Tail Pios. This is the hill, the mountain, where all of the mouths, where all of the tefillos, everyone turns to there, and so on. So therefore, in a similar way, we say regarding Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel, regarding the place of the Nasi Hadoir, that this is in a similar way the main place where all Yidden are. Says the Rebbe, V'oid v'ikar, further point, and even a more main point, is the mile of Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel in connection to the Geula. How is that? Says the Rebbe, when we look at the idea of what Rabbeinu is, we just said Rabbeinu, our Rebbe refers to the Nasi Hadoir. The Nasi Hadoir is also the Mashiach of the Doir, the Goyel, the Redeemer of the Yidden. Just like Moshe Rabbeinu, the first Nasi, which regarding him we say Goyel Rishon Hu Goyel Achron, the first Redeemer, is also the last Redeemer. So in a similar way, we say this about the Nasi Hadoir, that he is the Mashiach Shebedoir. Why is that? So the Rebbe explains, it's known that in every single generation, we know that there's one person that is deserving because of his righteousness to be the Redeemer of the Yidden. And when the time will come, the Eibishter will reveal himself to him and send him. Says the Rebbe, it makes sense to say that who is this referring to? This is referring to the Nasi Hadoir. As it says in the Gemara itself regarding Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, Omar Rav. And by the way, this Rav, the Rebbe points out in Hara 57 that this is the same Rabbeinu ShebeBovel that we're talking about before. I want to get back to that footnote in a minute as well. Omar Rav. Rav said, Iman Chayo, if Mashiach is one of those people that are alive right now, Kigoy Rabbeinu HaKadosh, this would be referring to Rabbeinu HaKadosh, the Nasi Hadoir. And the Rebbe points out in Hara 56, the Rebbe brings from the Stei Chemed, that this was the way it was in every single generation, that people would know and be able to say who is the Mashiach of the generation. So in the time of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, he was the person, and people knew that he is the one that would be the Redeemer if that would be the time. And so too in every single generation there has to be someone that could be the Mashiach of the generation. And based on this, the Talmidia Arizal also said about him that he was the one that was deserving to be Mashiach. And the Stei Chemed over there finishes off with the words B'chol Zahu Pasha, that this is all obviously very, very simple and very obvious. Just going back for a minute to Ha'ara 57, which we mentioned before, we said that Rav said that if Mashiach is from those people that are alive today, so it would be Rabbeinu HaKadosh. So the Rebbe says in Ha'ara 57, first of all, the Rebbe points out, I said before, that Rav, this is the person who we called him before, Rabbeinu ShebeBovel. Rabbeinu HaKadosh was in Eretz Yisrael, and Rav was in Bovel. But the Rebbe says that based on the words of Rav, the fact that Rav said this about Rabbeinu HaKadosh, he is paskening the same thing about himself. And that's Rav, the Rabbeinu that we're talking about, Rabbeinu ShebeBovel. Here we have it more clear, the connection to Mashiach, because he is the one that said it about Rabbeinu HaKadosh, he's the one that said it about Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, but the Rebbe is saying by the fact that he's saying it about Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, he's paskening it on himself as well. Why is that? So in the footnote, in the star on the bottom of the page, the Rebbe brings a very, very famous concept. Just mention it briefly. The concept is that when one paskens something about somebody else, ultimately he's paskening the same thing about himself as well. And therefore, by Rav paskening, Rabbeinu HaKadosh was the Mashiach of that time, so the same thing in truth applies to him as well. So the Rebbe now goes further in the Sikha itself. So from all of this we understand that when we speak about Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel, the main inyan of Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel, in addition to the facts that we said before that the Shechina is there and that Beis HaMikdash will come down there and so on, Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel also represents the Geula of Bovel, the Geula of Golus. In other words, giving the Yidden the koyach for all of their avodah to make out of Chutz La'aretz, out of Bovel, out of the place of Golus, to make it into a Eretz Yisrael. It's a very, very famous Pisgam, Machda Eretz Yisrael. And how is this done? First and foremost, of course, this is accomplished in the Shul and the Bati Medrash and the Mikdash Mat and the places where Yidden ended up. And from there, the Kedusha comes out to the rest of the places of the nations and the rest of Chutz La'aretz. And by doing that, we hasten, we bring quicker the promise of Asidu Eretz Yisrael, Shetispashim B'chol Ha'arotzos, that Eretz Yisrael will spread out to all of the countries, that the whole world is all going to be on the level of Eretz Yisrael the way it's now, and Eretz Yisrael is going to be on the level of Yerushalayim the way Yerushalayim is now, and as we said before, the Yerushalayim is going to spread out to the whole Eretz Yisrael. And as we mentioned, because in Yerushalayim we're going to have all the Bati Knesses, all the Bati Medrash, all attached to the Beis HaMikdash. Says the Rebbe, since the main idea of Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel is the idea of bringing all Yidden to the Geula and bringing all Shulim, and that they should all be set in Eretz Yisrael, all attached to the Beis HaMikdash. So based on all of this, not only is this the main Mikdash Ma'at within Golos, like we said before, that the Beis HaMikdash like traveled and settled over there, but instead, or rather, this itself is the very place of the Mikdash itself, because as we said before, the Beis HaMikdash is going to be Nizgala over there first, so it's actually the place of the Beis HaMikdash, and from there, it is going to return to Yerushalayim. Says the Rebbe in Sivov, after we explained the general idea of Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel, so first of all, this would have applied in the literal Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel in the time of Rav, within Bovel, all of those many, many years ago. Obviously, it would have applied over the generations in the place of the house of the Nossi Ador. Now the Rebbe starts bringing it closer home to 770. And the Rebbe says, start from the beginning of ShebeBovel, based on all of this, we could explain now the concept of Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel in our generation regarding the house, the shul, the Beis Medrash of Kavoid, Kedushas, Moire, V'chami Admur, Nesiderenu. The Rebbe says, by first prefacing, we know there's a famous Pisgam of the Frierdiker Rebbe, that Eser Goli is Gol Solubavitch. The Lubavitch had gone into 10 stages of Golus from the city of Lubavitch. So from the city of Lubavitch, in which was the Gili of Pnimi Satoida, as it was explained through Chassidus Chabad for a number of generations, the Chassidim, the Rabbeim, traveled first to Rostov, and then to Petrograd, and eventually out of Russia into Latvia, and then to Poland, eventually to America, within America itself to a number of places, until finally the set place of Beis Rabeinu, the Beis HaKnesses, and the Beis HaMedrash of the Rebbe, the center of Lubavitch, for the 10 years, which is a whole period. And we know HaKol Hoylech Achar Achitum, that everything goes based on the conclusion. So these are the last 10 years of Kvoid Kedushas Moiri V'chami Admur Nesidereinu in his physical life in this world. And furthermore, even after his Istalkos, we know that the Kedusha never moves away from the place, and Adarab, it's in a way of Mailin B'Kodesh. It keeps on going more and more and more until the coming of Mashiach. So that's first of all regarding the actual place itself, that this is where Lubavitch and the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Rebbe of course, came to. Says the Rebbe in a similar way regarding the Golus of general of Klal Yisrael within this generation. So a vast majority of Yidden, both as far as numbers, as far as how much they're built up with shuls, etc., is in Golus America. And the Rebbe says that's in fact one of the reasons why the Nossi Hadoir, because Anossi Yuakol, that's actually why he lived and found himself for the last 10 years in Golus America. And from there he spread Torah and Yiddishkeit and Chassidus also to all the other places where Yidden were, through his Talmidim, through his Shluchim, all around the world. Now, since we said that every single place where the Yidden went, the Shekhinah is with them, so in this last Golus, in the place where most of the Yidden are, together with the Nossi Hadoir, they are in America, so obviously where's the Shekhinah? The Shekhinah also came to America. And within America itself, as the Gemara says, ShebeBovel Heichal, so within America itself, where specifically? The main Mikdash Ma'at, the Beis Rabeinu, the place of the Rebbe is similar to, as we said before, the Shul of Hutzal and Shof V'Yosef. This is the place where the Mikdash itself traveled. The Beis HaMikdash of Yerushalayim came to. So now it came to the main place of the Nossi Hadoir of 770. And from here, that's where the Shekhinah now spreads out to all the other shuls and the Bati Medrash in the world. This idea, saying that the place of the Rebbe is the place of the Beis HaMikdash, the Rebbe says, the Rebbe brings in Orah 74. And the Rebbe brings from Hatomim, a very, very, very beautiful expression. And the Rebbe says, quoting from the Hatomim, Miyoyim Shechora Beis HaMikdash, from the time that the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, and the Kodesh HaKadoshim, until the time that the Eibush will have Rachmanas and bring us the Goyal Tzedek and bring us the Redeemer and build Yerushalayim and the Beis HaMikdash and the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Up until that time, Lubavitch is our Yerushalayim, and the Shul where the Rebbe davens is our Beis HaMikdash, etc. The Rebbe just says etc. over here, and the Hatomim goes further to speak about how the room of the Rebbe is the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Rebbe himself is the Oroin in which the Luches are. The Rebbe doesn't bring all of those last details in the footnote over here. But back inside the Sikha. So the Rebbe says, to clarify and explain all of this, the Rebbe says, because in this generation, we are the last generation of Golus and the first generation of Gula. We are the ones completing all of the actions and avoida that has to be done in the time of Golus. Making out of Chutz La'aretz in the place of the nations, taking even the lowliest of lowliest places, the lower part of the world, place where the Gili of Matan Torah was not. And Dafka by elevating the lowest place, that's the way we elevate all the rest of the world as well. How is that achieved? Through Beis Rabeinu, through the house of the Rebbe, in this lower part of the world, from which light is coming out to the rest of the world, making from the whole world all the way to the furthest corners of the world, making it into an Eretz Yisrael. The idea that we said before of Asidu Eretz Yisrael, that Eretz Yisrael is going to spread out to all of the lands, to the rest of the world, in a similar way Yerushalayim is going to spread out to the rest of Eretz Yisrael. As we said before, in it is going to be set, attached to the Beis HaMikdash, all of the Bati Knesses, all the Bati Medrash of the whole world, which is of course going to happen by the Gula, Amitis Vashleimai de Mashiach Tzidkenu, which is the Nossi Hadoir, which he is the Mashiach, he is the Goyal of the Yidden of the generation. And a further point, a very important point, that he is also the Nasi of Teiras HaChasidus. That we know that through spreading Chassidus to the outside, through Yafutzum and Nesach Chutza, all the way to the greatest distances, that's exactly the way we bring Malka Mashiach, that's exactly the way we bring Melech HaMashiach. Says the Rebbe, based on all of this, we can now understand the amazing quality of Beis Rabeinu, the Migdash Ma'at, the main Migdash Ma'at, in this very, very last Golos, the place where the Beis HaMikdash itself came to. And therefore, as we said before, this is actually the place of the Beis HaMikdash of La'asid. And not only that, but in this place, the Beis HaMikdash itself will be revealed, and from this place, it will return to Yerushalayim. I just wanted to go back for a minute to a footnote earlier, where the Rebbe clarifies a little bit more this idea of saying that the Nasi Hadoir is the Moshiach, ShebeBovel. So in Order 53, the Rebbe says that we know that generally every single Yid really has a spark of Mashiach inside of himself. And we know that this is the concept of the Yechidah. The deepest part of the Neshama, called the Yechidah, is the spark of Mashiach inside of every Yid. This Yechidah is a spark of the general Yechidah, which is the Neshama of Mashiach. So Mashiach, he is the Yechidah of all of Klal Yisrael, and every Yid there's a little spark of Mashiach inside of him. Now, since we say Han-Nasi Hu HaKoil, since we say that the Nasi includes all of the other Yidden, so in other words, he includes the sparks of Mashiach that's found in every single Yid. He includes all of those little Yechidas that's found in every single Yid. So in other words, the Neshama of Mashiach is the general Yechidah. What's the general Yechidah? The general Yechidah is the Neshama of Mashiach. Again, just to clarify, every single Yid has a spark of Mashiach inside himself. The Nasi Hadoir includes all of the Neshama, so he includes all of those sparks of Mashiach. He is the one that has the most general spark of Mashiach inside himself. So therefore it follows, and it's logical to say, that he is the one that is Mashiach ShebeBovel. And now, getting back to the actual Sikha itself, in Sif Zayin, says the Rebbe, this special connection between Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel, and we're saying it has a special connection to Mashiach, the Nasi Hadoir being Mashiach, and so on and so forth, and that 770 specifically is connected to the idea of the Geula. Says the Rebbe, this is all also hinted in the name of what Beis Rabeinu is called in our generation. So first of all, Rabeinu. When we speak about Rabeinu, so the Rebbe is going to look right now at the two names of the Frierdiker Rebbe. The first name, being Yosef, is very, very much connected to the Geula. The Pasuk says, "Vayomahu Yosef Hashem Shenis Yodoi Liknois Es Sha'ar Amoy Asher Yishoer Me Asher Mitzrayim Goimer." So it's a Pasuk saying that the Eibishter Yosef, he will once again stretch out his hand to bring back all of the Yidden from all of these different places, all the way Me'ir Yam, from the islands, etc. And then the Pasuk says, "V'osaf Nitchei Yisrael," is going to gather the dispersed of the Yidden from all the parts of the world. So both in the Pasuk, the word Yosef as well as V'osaf, both aspects of Geula, the Eibishter bringing the Yidden back from Golos, is hinted in words that are very similar, of course, to the name Yosef. The second name, Yitzchak, of course, means laughter and happiness, which the ultimate of that is going to be by the Geula Amitis V'Ashleima through Mashiach Tzidkenu. As the Pasuk says, Az Yimolei Schoik Pinu, that we're going to then, Mashiach comes, then specifically, we are going to have the ultimate laughter and joy. And in fact, when Mashiach comes, the Gemara says, we're going to say to Yitzchak specifically, Ki Ato Avinu, you are our father, referring to Yitzchak Avinu. So here again, we see that the name Yitzchak, both mitzad Indian of laughter, as well as the name Yitzchak itself, are once again, both in Yonim, connected very much to the Geula. Now the Rebbe looks at Beis Rabeinu, the actual house, at the place of the Rebbe, at the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Rebbe is going to discuss now the actual name of 770. And the Rebbe says like this: the number of the house, 770, and based on this number, based on the address, that's the way people refer to Beis Rabeinu. All Yidden refer to it as 770. And the Rebbe in the footnote actually says that it's expressed in all different languages as well. In Lashon Kodesh it's referred to as Shva Meis Shivim, and in Yiddish it's referred to as Zibin Zibitzik. And so too in English, the Rebbe says in the Ha'ara over here, the Rebbe says that it's called 770. So what's the significance of the number 770? Says the Rebbe that the number 770 is the same gematria as the word paratzta, as in the famous pasuk of paratzta yom of akedma v'tzafoyle v'negba. So what is this pasuk into, and what does it mean that 770 is the gematria of the word paratzta? This is hinting to the idea that from 770 light is coming out, spreading out to all four sides of the world, and in a way of paratzta breaking all barriers, that all four sides of the world are all elevated to the darga of Eretz Yisrael. There's no more boundaries, no more limitations anymore. As we said before, all of Eretz Yisrael is going to spread out to the rest of the world. And especially, as we said, that the Shulin and the Bati Medrash of the whole world will be set in Eretz Yisrael and going to be attached to the Beis Hamikdash, Begula, Amitis Vashlema, the Mashiach Tzidkenu, regarding whom it says. About Mashiach, it also says an expression similar to Paratzta. Pasuk says, Paratzta Alecha Peretz. This is referring to Peretz, the son of Yehuda, who his descendant is Mashiach. So the pasuk says Paratzta Alecha Peretz, which means literally you sort of burst out or you broke out. Chazal say this refers to Mashiach, as the pasuk says Allah hapoiritz lefaneim, the one that's going to break through. He is the one that goes up in front of them. So Mashiach is referred to as a poiretz, or from the word paratzta, similar word to faratzta, the word paratzta being the gematria 770. Says the Rebbe, we could connect these two in Yonim. That is the remez in the number 770, the base aspect of Beis Rabeinu, the house number, along with the name of the Frierdiker Rebbe, which we said is the concept of Yosef, like in the pasuk, Yosef Hashem Shenis Yadoi, that the Eibishter is going to bring all the Yidden to Eretz Yisrael, etc. And the Rebbe explains as follows. The number 770 represents a certain shleimus, a certain perfection within the number 7 itself. And the Rebbe says, we have 7 as it is multiplied by 10. 10 generally we know is called a mispar hasholim, a complete number. And so therefore 7 times 10, that's you have the union of 70. And furthermore, we know Chassidus often speaks about the concept of eskalus, of each thing being included within each other again and again. So we have 10 times 10. So if we have 7 and times 100, that will be 700. And both together we have 700, so that would be the 7 as its kolul, or made up from the 100, or 70, so we have both together 770. The Rebbe says the explanation of all of this is that the number 7 itself represents Mitzias Oilam, the way the world is, a world that's created within 7 days. We have the 7 midos, that's the general concept known as Seder Ishtalshalos, is connected with the fact that there's a world and the Yidden are dealing with the world and elevating the world and so on. Now the Yidden we know are divided into 7 groups, 7 levels in Avodas Hashem, the 7 midos, the 7 branches of the menorah. So therefore when we speak about the shleimus of the number 7, because it's 770, what does this show? This shows on the shleimus of the avodah of the Yidden in elevating the world by doing their avodah in the time of Golus. And obviously, once we finish doing our avodah in the time of Golus, that's when we get redeemed out of Golus, and we come back to Eretz Yisrael. So again, the number 770 that Rebbe is explaining, the 7 itself is representing the world where it's created in 7 days and 7 midos, and the fact that we're saying that it's multiplied by these numbers of 70 and by 10s, making it 70, and by 100, is representing that the Yidden that are also made up of 7, the 7 levels in Avodas Hashem, are doing their Avodah perfectly, elevating the world and bringing the world to a state of the Gula. The B'Loshen HaKosov says the Rebbe to use the words of the Pasuk, in which we see the connection that we said before. By Yoim O Yosef Adnai Shenis Yoded, the Eibush is once again going to stretch out his hand and bring back the Yidden from all of the different places. The Pasuk mentions Asher, Mitzrayim, Pasres, Kush, Elam, Shinor, and Chamos. So referring to the Gula of Yidden, how many places are mentioned in the Pasuk? 7 places. And then in fact the Pasuk goes on and says, Ume'iyeh Hayom. After discussing 7 places, the Pasuk also speaks about the islands of the sea. And the Rebbe says this is a hint, and this is referring to the lowest place of the world, Chatzi Kadra Tacht, in the lower part of the world. Now we know that by elevating the lowest part, that's the way you elevate also the higher parts, all of those 7 lands, which really 7 is including, as we said before, the whole world. So we're speaking over here about the idea of elevating every single part of the world. Says the Rebbe, when we speak about this concept of the shleimus of the number 7, either in 700 or in 70, so in addition to just speaking about the house of 770, The Rebbe says there's also a hint over here in the shleimus of the avodah of Rabbeinu, of the Frierdiker Rebbe, during his lifetime, because Frierdiker Rebbe lived just about 70 years, so it's 7 sets of 10 years, from Tov Reish Mem until Tov Shin Yud, until finally completing in his last set of 10 years, in that last decade, finishing the avodah in Chatzi Kader HaTachtoim, in the lower part of the world, working from that house, which is the gematria of 770, including, says the Rebbe now, also the continuation of the avodah in the years following that, of course, in which generation? Once again, connected to the number 7. The 7th generation, which you know that Kol HaShvi and Chavivin, all 7 are specially cherished and beloved, that through that becomes a shleimus of Ma'aseinu v'Avodaseinu throughout the whole time of Golus, and bringing that completion in all 7 lands, in the 7 different areas that were mentioned in the Pasuk, which represent also the whole world, and that taketh him yad, the Eivish will once again take his hand and gather all the Yidden by having the Paratzto, Olecho Peretz, as we said before, which Paratzto, once again, this word, is the gematria of 770, and the idea of Olah Poiritz Lefanayim, that the one who breaks through, Mashiach, who breaks through all barriers, is the one that goes up and brings the Geula for the Yidden. Just wanted to go back once again for a second to a previous order and connecting the whole idea of 770 with the avodah of bringing the Geula and so on. In order 92, the Rebbe says quite an amazing thing. The Rebbe says, Lahoyer, just to note that the words Beis Mashiach is actually the gematria, the same numerical value as the word Paratzta, which is, as we said before, the gematria of 770. So 770 itself equals Beis Mashiach. So just to clarify or to summarize some of the main points that we had until now. So the Rebbe was speaking first of all about the idea that the idea of Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel, first of all, that's the place of the main Hisgalos of the Shechina during the time of Golus. That's one point the Rebbe explained. The Rebbe explained that by the time of the Geula, this is the place where the Beis HaMikdash is going to be Nizgala, the place where the Beis HaMikdash is going to come first. The Rebbe explained this is the place that's going to be closest attached to the Beis HaMikdash. And now in the last part of the Sikha, the Rebbe was connecting this very, very much with 770 itself, being the place of the Nasi Ador, being the place of the Mashiach Shebedor, and the number 770 itself, as the Rebbe was explaining, representing that we're holding at this time, we're finally elevating the whole world, the world that's created in the 7 days, and with the 7 midos being perfected with all of the bitter, with all of the refinement that had to go through it. And in this way, we're holding mamish at this final stage of the bitter of the whole world. And this is why it's specifically in 770, where we're saying is the final stages of what's happening right now. Says the Rebbe in Seif Ches. In all of the above, there's even an additional emphasis in the most recent time. The Rebbe says the avoid of spreading Torah and Yiddishkeit and the Chassidus to the outside from Beis Rabeinu from 770 has been going on and on, greater and greater, also after those last 10 years that we spoke about from the Frierdiker Rebbe's life, but it's been going on now for more than 40 years, from Tov Shin Yud until Tov Shin Nun is 40 years, and now it's even more than that. What do we know about 40 years? As it says in the Pasuk, Nosan Hashem Lachem Leiv Ladas, and the Eibush after 40 years gives you finally that heart to understand it all, the eyes to see, the ears to hear. So we have a much deeper appreciation and connection to all of these Inyanim after the Avodah going on for 40 years. So therefore, says the Rebbe, what comes out of all of this is that Beis Rabeinu, the place of 770, is on the level of Talpius, which we translated before. This is the place, the tail, the mountain, the hill, which all Yidden are turning to for more than 50 years, because we have from Tov Shin till Tov Shin Yud, those 10 years in the Frierdiker Rebbe's lifetime, and then the next 40 years, so from Tov Shin till Tov Shin Nun. And we know the concept of 50 years is considered, that in the Pasuk it's referred to Olam, Ad Olam, in other words, forever. This is the place where Yidden come to. And the Rebbe says this is even more emphasized when we see very, very clearly that there's continues to be more and more so, that there's more and more Yidden constantly coming to Beis Rabeinu. And we know the idea of Beroi Vam Hadras Melech, the more Yidden come there, the more glory and the more beauty it brings for the king. Including, which king are we speaking about? Man Malka Rabbanon. So generally Rabbanim are referred to as the Malachim, and especially the Nasi, the Melech Hador. So the more Yidden coming to 770, the more glory and beauty this brings for the Melech. And therefore, says the Rebbe, there became a need to expand even more the Beis Rabeinu, to expand 770, and in a way of breaking through all barriers, in a way of Paratzta, which we said before, is the Gematria 770, making it mamish like a Bayis Chodesh, making it in a renewed way, building a new place. And the Rebbe points out over here in the footnote, the Rebbe says, we speak about the idea of a Bayis Chodesh, the Rebbe says, we have in a brand new house, we have a concept called Hanochas Even Apino, pointing out a cornerstone, and it's pointed out in the footnotes over here that the Rebbe himself had gone out to put down a Hanochas Even Apino, to put down a cornerstone for the expansion of 770, which really, as the Rebbe is pointing out over here, it's not just like a renovation, but mamish making it into a new place. And based on what we said before about the great Milo of Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel, that this is mamish the place of the Beis HaMikdash, that it came and settled over there. This is the very place of the Beis HaMikdash. And in fact, right over there, the Beis HaMikdash will be Nizgal, and from there is going to come to Yerushalayim. We can now understand the amazing zechus of every single year to participate, both with his body as well as with his money. And the Rebbe says, Kol Amar, the more you increase Harizim Meshubach, the more praiseworthy it is for everyone to participate and help along in the building of Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel of 770 as a preparation for the Beis HaMikdash HaAsid coming down. Take it from Yad Mamash. The Rebbe says, V'hazman Gromo, the time is very appropriate for this. In the Shnas HaTzadik, in the 90th year, of course, the Rebbe is speaking about his 90th year, the Rebbe's 90th year, as it's emphasized in the Tehillim of Kapitel Tzadik. The Rebbe says, which is Shaykh to this year. What does it mean Shaykh to this year? Of course, because the Rebbe's Kapitel of that year, which starts off with the words, in the beginning it has the words, Hashem Moin Ato Yisalonu B'Dor V'Dor, that the Eibishter, you have been our dwelling place throughout the generations. Now this, of course, also refers to the Bati Knesses and Bati Medrash. And it finishes off with those famous words, V'yinoyam Hashem Elokeinu Oleinu, that the pleasantness of Hashem should be upon us. Omaisi Yodeinu Koinaneu, and the work of our hands, the Eibishter should establish, which is of course referring to the fact that the Eibishter is going to dwell in the Mishkan and then in the Beis HaMikdash. Therefore, the Rebbe concludes V'yirotzen, that even before we go ahead and expanding Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel, should already be Nizgal and come down from Shamayim, the future Beis HaMikdash, the Beis HaMikdash that the Eibishter himself makes. The third Beis HaMikdash, and also called the triple Beis HaMikdash. Triple because it also includes the Mishkan, as well as the first and the second Beis HaMikdash. So it'll be Nizgala first, once again the Rebbe clarifies, first in Beis Rabeinu ShebeBovel, first down here in 770, which is also a Bayis Meshulish, a triple place, because it's a place for davening, a place for learning, and a place for Maisim Tovim and Gemilas Chasadim. And from here we will go to Yerushalayim, together with all the Bati Knesses and all the Bati Medrash of the whole world, which will all be set in Eretz Yisrael in Yerushalayim, all attached to the Beis HaMikdash, together with all the Yidden of the whole world. As the Pasuk says, Vaviyosim al Arkochi, I'll bring them to my holy mountain. And V'si Machtam, I'll make them rejoice, Meveis Tfilosi, my place of davening. Ki Beisi Beis Tfilah Yikari L'chol Amim, because this is a place for davening, and for all the nations to come there. And as the Pasuk says, Nochen Yi Yahar Beis Hashem B'Rosh HaHorim, that the mountain of Hashem will be established at the top of the mountains. The Beis HaMikdash will be established, and it will be lifted up from all other hills and mountains, and all the Goyim will flock to there, and many nations will go there, and they will all say, L'chu v'nala, let us go up to the mountain of Hashem, El Beis Elokei Yaakov, to the place of the Eibishter of Yaakov, V'yireim b'drachos, so they should teach us from his ways, and we'll go in his paths. And as the pasuk concludes, Ki mitzia in teitzei soira, Odvar Hashem Yerushalayim. And this will, of course, be the Torah Chadashim Ititetze, the new Torah that we're going to get, revealed through Mashiach. And all of this, of course, take it from Miyad Mamash. So I want to wish everybody a Chesima and a Gmar Chesima Toiva, and we should have already the Galus of the Beis HaMikdash within 770, take it from Miyad Mamash.